Hey y'all, and welcome back to Native Soil. We continue season 5 as we explore the theme of youth ministry, and it seemed appropriate as we dive into this topic to invite our very own director of youth ministry and young adult ministry for the Archdiocese of Mobile, Tex Phelps. Welcome to Native Soil.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Great to have you here. So you just this past July would have been your 1 year anniversary working with the Archdiocese?
So I started in mid-May
Okay.
of 2021. So it's been a little year and a couple of months.
Okay. So we're getting fresh take for 1 year in. And I see you brought your favorite drink to Native Soil.
Absolutely. I'm from Texas, and Texans love Dr. Pepper. So
That's a thing in Texas?
it is a thing in Texas.
Everyone has to drink it.
I wouldn't say has to, but it's a pretty big deal in Texas.
Right. So getting to know you for a year, there's a couple of things that are important to you. One being Dr. Pepper seems to help fuel you through the day. This two would be Whataburger.
Another Texas thing.
Another
yes.
Texas. Yeah. Do things. Hence the name Tex.
Yes.
There's a lot of connectivity there. Well, listen, while we're on that, why don't just share with everybody that might be meeting you for the first time a little bit about yourself, where you're from, your family, that kind of thing.
So I was born in Dallas, Texas, and then when I was about 5, we moved to North Mesquite, which is a suburb of Dallas. It's really close. In fact, we moved like 5 miles, but part of that was because of the school system.
Okay.
And so we moved there. And I've lived in Texas for most of my life. We weren't a very religious family after we moved to North Mesquite, but we were a pretty close family, and I lived there until I went to until I got into youth ministry. So I went to college at it's now Texas State. It was Southwest Texas when I was there.
Okay.
Which is in San Marcos, Texas. And it's very funny. When I was young, I never even thought I would live outside of Texas. Like, not because my name's Tex and I felt like I had to live in Texas. It's just that it was not on my mind to live in. And I would say a lot of people from Texas kind of have that mindset.
This is our nation.
Yeah, I won't go. Yeah, it's just
this is the nation of Texas.
We
live within the
very
borders.
Proud,
right,
to be from Texas, and so if not for really youth ministry, I may have lived in Texas all my life.
Right. So, are there a lot of people named Tex in Texas? Is that a common name? Like,
I mean, I think it's more common
singular?
than I know.
Yeah.
The reality is, if you go back in history, a lot of people were nicknamed Tex that were from Texas. So, whether it be their name or a nickname, but there are. I do hear from people. I hear a lot of times people say that, that I've never heard anybody. I've never met anybody named Tex. But then sometimes I do. Oh, I know a Tex, like and so on. But I don't know if it was a nickname or the real name. So I don't know if it was. There are a lot of people.
Right. It's tough to figure out the exact evolution. Yeah. But one interesting thing I think is very important for the people of God to know is, although you were born and raised in Texas, you somehow, by the grace of God shined down upon you, became a big Alabama football fan. Is that correct?
That is correct. It's actually
Roll Tide to everyone listening.
It's actually
just lost half our viewership.
It's actually by the grace of my grandmother. So my grandmother's side of the family is from Alabama, and so we used to come visit Alabama every other summer. We'd make the drive from Texas. She lived in Dadeville, and so some of my fondest memories growing up was making that trip. And she was always she's a huge Alabama fan,
right?
And so that kind of started it. I can't say why, other than just that connection to my grandmother started it. And Bear Bryant was larger than life back then, so that combination is where I started following Alabama.
That's just, like I said, the grace of God. Paul Bear Bryant, rest in peace. That's great. And Dadeville, did you ever eat any Wickles pickles?
I have not. I've never even heard of it.
Okay, that's there's like these type of pickles that are made in Dadeville.
Really?
And, yeah, and they've got like a little spice in them, and you can find them in a lot of a lot of the grocery stores, around Alabama, but I think beyond they've been pretty successful. But I don't know if they were around. They might have been started post, your childhood visits. So do you have siblings?
I have 2 sisters and 1 brother, and they all live in Dallas.
Okay. And where do you fall in your number?
I am number 3.
Number 3.
My sisters are older, and my brother is younger.
Okay, great. And so so you're like the black sheep living in Alabama. They're all still in Texas.
Yeah, but except for they've lived other places.
Okay.
Too. But they just, now in their lives, they've all
kind of
ended
migrated
up
back.
into,
Right. So you mentioned that you were not Catholic growing up. What was your religious upbringing like?
So up until about 5 when we moved to North Mesquite, like I said, it's probably 5 miles, even maybe not even that far. My family went to a Methodist church, and we would go pretty regularly. I mean, maybe even every Sunday. I can't say for sure, but we went very regularly. In fact, I can remember going outside of just Sunday service. Like my mom was active in the church, and my dad was very active. But when we moved, we stopped going. Slowly, kind of faded and stopped going. Up until probably 1 or 2 years after we moved, we didn't go at all. And at the time, I just thought, looking back, I always thought like we're just being lazy, But the reality is there were some issues I didn't know about, and that kind of from then until really college, I didn't really go to church of any consistency.
Wow.
And then when I graduated from college, I went to I'm not any longer, but I was a good basketball player back in my younger days. And when I got back from college, in fact, actually, that's why I went to Texas State, was to walk on to basketball.
And you did that?
I ended up not doing that, but that's why I went there.
Right, you wanted to give it a try.
Yep. And so when I got back, I had a lot of friends that played basketball. I used to play like every night. And so we played on some just like city league teams. And one of my friends asked me if I wanted to go play for his Baptist church. And he's like, you don't have to go to church. You just come play basketball. Right. So me and my brother and our best friend, we all were like, yeah, well, more basketball. What's wrong with that?
Right.
And so
get some trophies.
We played for a year. We won the league. We did very well. They have like a regional tournament, and it was a great season. We get to the end of the season, a new pastor comes in at the Baptist church and says, you got to go to church once a month. And so, and I was like, hey, that's not, that much to do to play basketball.
Right.
And so, but my brother,
I can pay that price.
But my brother and his and our best friend both didn't want to do that, and so they dropped off. So I was the last one of us 3 to continue, and so I started going once a month, and very quickly. I mean, and I will say this: I know that something was burning my heart all my life. I just didn't know what I was looking for. This kind of gave me that opportunity. I would say I was probably intimidated just to walk into a church, and I wouldn't have known what denomination to walk into. Like,
where do you even begin?
Yep, I didn't know where to begin, but I began with basketball.
Right.
And so then I just started going to church every Sunday. And
you're going by yourself because your brother and your friend weren't.
Yep, everybody. Now I will say this: I mean, by myself, maybe a bit harsh, because like I still had my basketball teammates there. Like they were.
So you knew a couple people.
Yeah.
Right.
So it wasn't. Yeah, I wasn't just walking in. Although it was still a little. It could be intimidating.
Of course.
And part of it was going to a Baptist church. I was always any church. I was like, what are they going to ask me? Like, they're going to ask me these tough questions, and I don't want to come off dumb and all that. And so, but as I started going, what I decided was that because the Bible's very big in the Baptist church, is I was just going to read the Bible cover to cover, and I kind of did that over the course of that first year I was going to church. And just with that and everything that was happening over the course of a few years, I realized that I didn't have the same beliefs that the Baptist church had in certain areas. Right. And one of them being the Bible, the literal interpretation of the Bible was something that I kind of struggled with a little bit. And so I decided that I was going to kind of explore, what religion I was. I didn't really know.
Right.
I don't know how to say that, but I was like, I just didn't.
Yeah, because
know.
you kind of dabble, you kind of raised Methodist, but then kind of, as far as going to church and all, there's this long break. You start playing basketball with some Baptist guys. You start going to Baptist church because you have to play basketball. So that's kind of your first kind of as an adult exploration of your faith and kind of where you're going to belong. Some things weren't lining up. And so then you start looking elsewhere. How does that search land you in the Catholic Church? Because I imagine were you in Mesquite? Were you back in Mesquite at this point?
I started in Mesquite.
Okay.
That's where when I first started playing basketball. I'd actually moved to North Dallas.
Okay.
At the time, I started exploring.
So there's like every denomination you can think of, probably.
Well, that's interesting.
Okay.
Got all these denominations you try to figure out. Okay, so the first thing I did was go and check out the Methodist Church, and that came from just like, well, I used to go to Methodist Church. Let me see what this is about.
Yeah.
So I started to go in, and the interesting thing is, I went from never going to church really for the most part of my life to going every Sunday, and so then I was like, well, I'll go to the Methodist Church, but I still want to go to my church at the time. So I'd go to the Baptist church and then go to the Methodist church.
On the same day?
On the same day.
Wow.
I did that for a few weeks. Methodist church was, I don't know. It didn't feel like right fit. And right now I can't tell you what I was actually looking for.
Right.
I just knew the Baptist church wasn't really where, it just didn't fit with what was in my heart, I guess. And maybe it was me more in my mind. I don't know. And then
what did you? This is somewhat a non-sequitur. What did you major in college?
Journalism. Broadcast journalism.
No kidding.
Yep.
Well, here we are, everyone, on Native Soil. God brings all things together.
So, it's funny because I think sometimes in everything it's like that was God's plan that I would do broadcast journalism to hopefully be able to share my faith, because I didn't go into broadcast journalism, I went a whole different way. But,
right.
And so it didn't fit though with where I ended up in any of my careers. So, but I, as I'm going to Methodist church, my brother and sister-in-law got married in the Catholic church, and my brother wasn't Catholic. He never became Catholic, but my sister-in-law was. And so I asked her, could I go to church with you on a Sunday?
Right.
And she's like, what about this Sunday? And I was like, sure. And so we went.
You're like, I've got to go to the Baptist and the Methodist, so it's got to fit in.
Well, yeah. That's the
evening mass.
The
we
great
got vigil mass. We got evening mass.
There's plenty. You go to
Baptist at 8. You go to
there's
Methodist
plenty of
at 9,
masses. And so that was timing wasn't a problem.
Right.
So we went, and she ended up driving to the church, and we went in, and something just clicked. And in fact, and I really thought she was a very devout Catholic. I don't know why I thought. But we went, and I was sitting in the pew, and we get to communion, and I said, "Am I supposed to go up there?" This is a really dumb story on my part. Like I told you, I didn't want to look dumb in church. But
yeah, right.
This is it. So she goes, "Yeah," and so I went up there, and I can't remember because I'm a youth Christian minister. I don't know why or how I received. Like I can't. Maybe I'm pretty smart. In fact, I probably just followed the crowd. So maybe I did it correctly,
right.
or it looked like I knew what I was doing,
right.
but I don't know. And they handed me it, and it was the host was not like anything I'd ever seen as far as in the Baptist Methodist or whatever like that. So I kind of took it back to the pew and asked my sister, "Am I supposed to eat this?" And she said yes. So I consumed it, and that was my first communion. And I'm not saying that was why everything went how it went,
no.
But I went. She dropped me off at my apartment, and I went to. I jumped in my car. I didn't even go inside. Jumped in my car. Drove to the bookstore, which is not that far, and bought a book on Catholicism. And it's interesting because I always joke that it wasn't Catholicism for dummies. It was something a little more in depth. And I read through that book. And as I'm reading through it, everything lined up with this is what I was already thinking. This is what I was already believing. And here it is, like laid out. And so from that point on, I was like, well, this is something I want to learn more about. And so I called that Monday. So this was Sunday. So Monday I called the church. I said, hey, I'd like to join the church. And the lady who answered said, oh, just come fill out a form and then you'll be a member. And I go, oh, I thought it'd be more to it than that. And she said, oh, are you Catholic? And I said, no. She goes, oh, I'll have somebody call you.
Right.
And so then somebody called me and I went to RCIA. And
so when you've been going to all these different churches searching for a while, and you go to one mass and read one book, and the next day you're ready to sign up. What was that like when, obviously, it's plenty of those stories where people received their first communion at the wrong time, whatever. But there was something about mass. There's something about receiving communion. There's something about that whole experience that just resonated with you at a very deep level.
So I wouldn't even say that. Yeah. What I would say is I was searching. So it's not like I was just going to the church and like kind of just like a blank slate every time I went to church, like just whatever comes. It was more about like, as I'm going through this, like I said, as I read the Bible, as I listened to what people were saying, as I just kind of went through that whole process, that things were formulating. Now, I had no idea what Catholicism was. I'm going to be honest. Like all I knew of Catholicism was the Catholic jokes that were told, and that's an honest and I say that jokingly, but that's really what was
like one of the best jokes you remember, or what would be like? Hey, do you remember like something that was
jokes and stuff?
Drinking,
like
that. Right.
So, so that was something. It's not like I listened to that and was like worried. Like it didn't keep me from wanting to be Catholic because I didn't know anything about it.
Right. But you just heard these kind of superficial, kind of jocular kind of things. But then you're there, something about intrigues you, read this book, and then you're signing up for RCIA basically.
Yeah. It's not like when I was reading in the book, it was like things I'd been thinking about, like, when I was reflecting on my faith and God and Jesus, it was like I already had these thoughts formulated. It's just, they fit like perfectly with what that book was telling me was right. And I'll say this, like, it wasn't like, like I just became Catholic. Right. It just started that process that I wanted to learn more about this. Right. And it just continued, like everything continued to just come together is really how it happened. But it started with that. Right.
You'd perceive the truth in different ways and like in your journey, but then to actually read in a book to say like, this is the truth, and it's lining up to how in your own journey, like how you perceive the truth, and you're like, okay, these are like real answers to questions I have. Yeah. And it kept leading to the next and the next and the next. So you come into the church, and how did your family take that? Were they kind of a little weirded out, or were they just kind of like, good for you, man? Like,
no, they were very supportive. Right. And I think like, and that's, to be honest, it wasn't really a concern. My parents were always very supportive. Right. It's interesting. I actually got baptized in the Baptist church, and they came to that baptism. Like they may have thought I was like, didn't know what was going on, because I got baptized in the Baptist church, and then not too much longer later, they came to when I came into the church, in Catholic church. So like they came to both ceremonies. They were very supportive. To be honest, it actually opened up conversations that we probably should have been having all along about faith. That once we stopped going to church, none of our family really brought those things up. It just, but then now we started having actual conversations about faith, and so I think that opened that up. I think they were probably at a point where they weren't ready to go back to a church at that point, but it did lead to some really great conversations.
That's awesome. So you have the support of your family. You jump in the Catholic Church, and you go to college for broadcast journalism, but then somehow you find your way into youth ministry. take us down that road. How did that happen? Was it a surprise? Did you lose a bet?
So it actually, it's funny. It may be embarrassing. I don't know, but a lot of my stories start with sports.
Right.
And what actually happened with my journey into youth ministry was that I'd been coaching. I started coaching Little League basketball when I was still in high school. So like I've been coaching for a long time. Right. And kids really responded to me as a coach. And so like that was always something I really, my minor in college was physical education back then. And cool. I had planned on going into coaching. And I kind of did it on the side. I had a full-time job, but I did coaching on the side. So, and I was coaching my nephew's team at the time. He was in 5th grade. And so.
And this is when you'd become Catholic?
Yeah, become Catholic.
So how old are you at this point?
So late 20s.
Okay.
And so go ahead.
And what's your job at that point?
So I worked full-time for a photographic retail store. I was a manager of a retail store called Warehouse Photographic. And so
shout out to Warehouse Photographic. And,
it's no longer around.
Yeah, so rest in peace.
But it was and so like that and I was doing comfortable, living comfortably and
coaching on the side.
Coaching on the side.
Okay, you got your nephew's team.
Got my nephew's team, and my sister-in-law. She came to me. So I'd probably been Catholic for about a year and a half by the time she came to me in that summer and said, "I'd like to teach religious education. Would you like to teach with me?" And I was like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, it seemed like a interesting thing to do.
Right.
And so it's interesting because she was a 2nd grade teacher. That's what she did for a living. And so she asked me, so the church had a class for 2nd grade or 5th grade. And she said, well, of course she would feel comfortable doing 2nd grade. That's what she normally did. And I said, well, I'd rather do 5th grade. I'd rather I don't want to just like do a class where they're just coloring things or something like that. And so I was like, I'd rather do 5th grade. So she reluctantly agreed to 5th grade. And so we started, and that first year when I was doing it, the kids really related to me. Like it was a great experience for me. But I had no formal teacher training. And it drove my sister-in-law crazy because I had no formal. So the kids had a great time, but she abandoned me after 1 year of religious education.
Like, you lack discipline.
I'm sure that was
there are rules to education.
So so that first year, I was like, yeah, I'll come back and I'll do 5th grade again. But she decided not to continue. But in our church, through 5th grade was in the morning. Religious education was in the morning.
On a Sunday?
Yeah, on Sunday morning. And in the evening was middle school, like 6th through 8th grade. And also high school, but they met separately. So that class that I went through with 5th grade, they were moving up to 6th grade. I was like, well, I can teach both. I can do 5th grade in the morning, 6th grade in the evening. And it's just continue that. And
were there some guys who you were coaching at basketball and also
because
there was kind of two different worlds?
Two different worlds, in a sense, because my nephew would come,
right?
Because he was the same age as I happened to be.
But it wasn't necessarily like CYO basketball. No, it was just like
it was actually just like a public league.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, and I was in North Dallas, but my nephew was in Carrollton, which is it's not far away, but far enough away that it was two completely different worlds for him. So I and midway through that 6th grade year, the guy who was the middle school youth minister, which it was just fun. I didn't know there was even careers in this. I didn't know there were jobs in this. Like I just been volunteering my time, but there was a part-time middle school youth ministry position that became open when he was leaving, and he's like, you should apply for it. And I was like, sure. So I applied for it, and ended up getting it. And with that, the interesting thing about that, like, I've only been Catholic 1.5 to 2 years, somewhere in that range. But I went through RCIA, so I thought I knew everything. So everything was good. But I
went to the classes.
Yeah,
I read a whole book in a day. I got my first communion and I read a whole book in a day.
I got it all. So I took the job, and as part of that, confirmation was I was in charge of confirmation.
Okay.
So
They were doing it in 8th grade?
Yep.
Right.
Doing it in 8th grade. And so I took over that like immediately, and which was very interesting now looking back. And I will say this, just then and always throughout my life, I really believe God has led me on this path that's just given me time. Sometimes I thought it was too much, but he knew what I could handle. And I really feel that way. That's been happening throughout especially when my faith and my job kind of came together.
Right.
And so I took that position, and through that, I stayed on with that for about 3 years. Basically, that first and second class, once they both got confirmed, I moved up to just volunteering with the high school group. But in that whole process, now that I realized there was like jobs in youth ministry, I didn't really know what they were per se, but I knew there was something out there.
Right.
That's when I started thinking, well, I'd really like to work full time in youth ministry.
What was it about the experience of youth ministry? Because you said, you're a manager of a store, you're coaching, but then you get in this space of teaching religious ed and then being a youth minister, and you said like you can see like the Lord is guiding, you can feel that. What was it about being in that space that lit you up, where you were like, I got to find a full-time job? That kind of gave you the confidence to pursue that. What was it about the experience? It's
the experience, to be honest with you. It was the reaction of the young people when we were in the classes.
Right.
There was just going through confirmation, like they were excited about being confirmed. It was just their reaction to what I was doing. That gave me the confidence.
Right.
And the second part of that is, at that point, it may, sometimes I think maybe it's because I didn't grow up like in a faith-filled home,
right,
that I was playing catch up all the time. I need to dedicate myself to my faith.
Right.
And so I think that was a big push as well. Like, not only am I enjoying doing it because of how things are going, but also that this is faith is the most important thing in my life.
Right.
And if I can spend all my time working with people,
yeah,
and so it just makes.
And you're getting to see that light go on in their eyes and in their mind and their heart, as far as in the way that you have experienced, like on your own, like you had this very intentional, grace-filled kind of faith journey, but to be able to contribute to theirs. And this might be me kind of stretching to connect dots, but I was kind of thinking it was interesting. You're talking about like broadcast journalism. It's about telling a story. It's like, how can you tell a story in a captivating way? But I could see, the Lord put you on this journey to discover the story of like his story of like saving us and redeeming us and all this. And that resonated with you. But then for you to be in a position to be able to tell that story to young people, like at an age where you were kind of, disconnected for whatever reason. I don't know. I'm just kind of connecting some dots, even just seeing, just listening to it, just seeing how the Lord kind of took all these different parts of your journey to kind of bring you into like a place that fits so well, with your life experience. It's pretty cool.
Well, I think
you think it has some legs? You think that theory has some legs?
Yeah. And what I would say when you're saying that is like, I think like I resonate with people that, because of where I came from, that maybe aren't as comfortable with their faith. They're searching too.
Yes.
And so like, I think that really connects with people, especially young people who are like, sometimes they probably feel like they're supposed to have figured it all out.
Yeah.
And in reality is they're still growing in their faith. And I think that's the part that, is really important to me. Like, I went on this journey because my faith was important. It became important at one point, and I wanted to go learn more about my faith.
Right.
So for me, that's what I want to pass on to people is like, I just want to give them, stoke that fire.
Right.
But really, they've got to go out and everybody's got to go out there and search for their faith on their own. And I hope I can just start that path, because I think it's so important that that everybody's pursuing their own faith. It kind of feels like sometimes when we work for the church, we're trying to have people live our faith. Like I can't have somebody live my faith, because I've had to go through all these experiences and all these
Right.
kinds of things. All I can do is say, hey, this is my faith journey, and hopefully that resonates with them so they can seek out their own path, and that hopefully leads them, the more fired up they are about their faith, the more
Right.
inspired they are, hopefully they'll go looking for what they're looking for, and that'll lead them to where I am.
Yeah, one of the keywords yours is search, and we've had the opportunity. There's a search program in the Archdiocese of Mobile, which is for teenagers. It's retreats put on for teenagers by teenagers with supervision of Tex and other youth ministers, volunteers from the diocese. But that's exactly. I mean, I've been blessed. I've been helping out with it for 6 years now, and it's an awesome ministry, and it's exactly what you're talking about. I mean, it's people giving their testimonies of how Christ has worked in their life and creating a space in which is conducive, for young people to kind of dip their toe in that water and, kind of start to carve out, their own experience of faith. So let's figure to capitalize on.
Oh, that's great.
No, it's a great ministry. Definitely seen it affect a lot of kids, and for all the reasons you're saying. So quickly, because you've had a long career in youth ministry now, but the Lord has kind of opened up like the next door. Take us from being part-time middle school youth minister, take us down the trajectory, just like the places and positions that bring you somehow to finally the land of Paul Bear Bryant that was planted in your heart at young age, bring you back to your roots to Mobile.
So as I said, I started thinking, well, I would like to change careers, if you will. I didn't know what that looked like, and so I started looking for a full-time position, and I was having a hard time finding a full-time position in Dallas. But they do have full-time positions. Like, at least there was full-time positions there, which is not always the case in youth ministry. But I was applying places, and I ended up getting a full-time position as youth, young adult, and campus minister in Macon, Georgia. And so that's where I started my full-time position.
Right.
And I was there for 3 years. And that was a great experience, because, like I said, it came easy, to be honest, when I was at All Saints in Dallas. And part of it was probably just because, not that I knew what I was doing, but the kids really responded to me as a youth minister.
Right.
So and Dallas, it's probably 25% Catholic, so very large Catholic population.
Right.
So
a lot of support,
just every time we did something, there was a lot of kids. There were some some bad events where nobody showed up, but there was a lot of, for the most part,
that's right,
a lot of people coming. So, but when I went to Macon, it's like 3 to 5% Catholic, and maybe closer to 3% or less.
Right.
And so it was a kind of eye opener of like, okay, this is not.
This is a different environment.
Yes.
I have a different pool, a much smaller pool.
Yeah.
Did they have Dr. Pepper there?
It's funny you say that. They did not really have. I mean, you could get Dr. Pepper, but
it was harder to find.
I tell people, well, it's kind of funny. I tell people, like, so I would play a game of this where I'd go into a restaurant. Like, yeah, I could buy a 6-pack of Dr. Pepper, but when I'd go into a restaurant, they rarely, if ever, had Dr. Pepper in there, because it's right next to it. It's near Atlanta, which is a big Coke area. Yeah. So
Mr. Pibb, did they?
Mr. Pibb. So my game I would play.
You're not settling for Mr. Pibb.
Well, you kind of have to. But
Right.
my game,
like it.
the game I had was when we go into a restaurant, is I'd order a Dr. Pepper to see if they would say, we don't have Dr. Pepper, would you like Mr. Pibb? Or if they just kind of slide the Mr. Pibb in, I think, and see if he notices. Right. So it was kind of funny, because I knew a lot of times they didn't have
Right.
Dr. Pepper. But there was a little bit of a challenge with Dr. Pepper, and Whataburger was not.
Yeah. This is a huge transition for you. I mean, your whole diet is having to.
It's funny you say that, because like I said earlier, I had never even dreamt of living outside of Texas.
Right.
So this is my first time living outside of the state of Texas. So just the whole experience was different.
Did that kind of feel like kind of a Abraham moment, in the sense of, he's like, leave your land. There's a lot of faith to leave everything and step out and, move to a different place. I mean, was that like leaving for that job for you? Do you look back on that and be like, that was kind of a stepping off point in your kind of a deeper stepping off point in your faith journey.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't know how deep at the time, but it's interesting you say that because so like I moved there and it was June. And so sometime between June and the first few weeks I was there, they asked me to come speak, just to introduce myself at all the masses. And the gospel for that day was Peter stepping out of the boat.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've always felt like God was always, and I know to me, it seems kind of arrogant to think God's sending me these personal messages,
right.
But like it just, all these things that happened in my life just seemed to fit so well. But that it's like what I said at that mass was completely different than how I feel now. But it's like looking back, it's like, like I didn't know what that meant to be stepping out of that boat,
right.
At the time. So now looking back, I was like, I can see all these things kind of being lined up that you can't see. There's been struggles, there's been great times, but that I couldn't see at the time. So yes, like stepping out in faith, and I did have to. I will share this. I didn't think about it until we were just talking now. When I went to interview, so again, I'm living in Dallas. It's most of my life, 3 years at college, but all the rest of my time's in Dallas.
Right.
Never wanted to leave. And I go to do a interview in Macon. And I go there, and they gave me a room in the rectory. Wonderful people. But when I first get there, mass is they invited me to go to mass. We'll go out to dinner. Mass is it was Saturday, so it was like 5. And but I get there about 1 o'clock. So I got like 4 hours. I'm in the rectory. Nobody's there. And so first thing I need to do is find Dr. Pepper. So I go walking downtown Macon, and I went like a certain way, just not knowing where I was going.
Right.
And this is before
GPS.
Yeah, I didn't have my phone there to go, okay.
Yeah.
So
print out MapQuest.
yeah. So I walk down the street, and there's nothing there. Like it's desolate. It's Saturday. And downtown Macon, that I learned was there wasn't a lot going on the weekends during the day. It was like a Saturday afternoon. There's not much going on. But I'm walking down the street, and there's absolutely nothing. And I did find the Dr. Pepper, I think, could have been a Coke. Mm-hmm. And so then I go back to the rectory, and I go into my room, and I kid you not, I just kind of put my hands on my head and said, I can't do this. There's absolutely no way. It was done. And then I went to mass, and went to dinner, and then the deacon there showed me around Macon, took me to other places besides the street I walked down.
One desolate street.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay, I can do this. But it was funny that I really did not think I could do it, and it was hard. It was very hard.
No. And but I appreciate you sharing that, because I think it's very, like you said, sharing our faith journey. It's very concrete, and there are these real moments where what God is asking you to do is impossible without Him, or at least seemingly impossible. And you do come to those moments where it's like, there's just no way. There's no way I could take like another step on this. And you even come to those moments of decision, and then the Lord, kind of will open up this horizon of, okay, there's other streets. So that's a great image, I think, people who are listening to kind of think about, in your own life, trying to sort things out. We have those moments we come to where it's like, this can't do it. Okay, so kind of quickly take it, Macon, Georgia. What's the next stop in the youth ministry trail?
So I could speed up my timeline.
Let's go like place and title, and then take us to Mobile, because we have to start.
When I was in Macon, the director, I didn't know they had directors of youth ministry really,
right,
for diocese. So the director in Savannah, he left, and they asked me to fill in and run their youth conference.
Right.
And I'd been there about 3 years, and I took that over, and that kind of made me think, this working for the diocese, once I started learning more about all that, might be a good fit for me.
Right.
And so I ended up applying for a job in the Diocese of Beaumont, got that position, and I really felt like it fit with a lot of my gifts,
right,
and talents. And so I was in Beaumont for 4 years. went back to Savannah for a year, and then I went to DC for 4.5 years, and then from DC I came here.
Wow. And so total, how many years have you spent in youth ministry now?
I would say 20 or 21.
Yeah. So that's a pretty long career in youth ministry. I think the average youth minister, they say their lifespan is like 7 months. Because it takes a certain personality, it takes a certain gift set, and
what I would say is with youth ministers, from what I've seen, like I say, a parish youth minister is taking that. It's the cycle is probably about 2 to 3 years. Now the 7 months may be more like, okay, but what about those that don't make it? Right. 2 to 3 years is probably an average of somebody who makes it past the 7 months.
But in your experience, it seemed like the more you did it, the more it just kind of affirmed the Lord is leading me on this path, and these are the gifts that I have, and they fit really well in this space. And the Lord kept opening up doors. Talk a little bit about Mobile. How did that come on the radar? How did you feel called to come here as kind of the next step in this journey of ministry?
Well, I would say, like, one of the things, living in DC, that's it was different challenges. And I won't lie, like, part of me was it was a real challenge to make it to an Alabama football game from DC. But also, I mean, I consider myself a Southern boy, so I was looking if I could find a good fit to move back to the South. With my Alabama connection, I mean, I've always, like, Texas is my home. There's no doubt about that. But I would say Alabama is my second home. So when a opportunity came in Alabama, that was something I strongly considered and ended up applying.
Well, it's good. We're glad the Lord brought you here. You know, it's been he went to a lot of effort to get you baptized and to get you into the church and then get you into youth ministry and then to come to Mobile. You know, it's an amazing succession. You know, you look at God's providence, and it's one thing to kind of think about in the abstract, but I think you just have such a great story of the Lord, like, intervening in, like, a real person's life and just kind of piece by piece kind of showing the next step. So I appreciate you being willing to share some of that. So you have 20 plus years of youth ministry experience. What would you say are some important components? Maybe people are listening out there in their own parishes and they're like, what do we do to have successful youth ministry, to teenagers? What advice could you give? I know you could probably go on for a long time, but, like, what's one or two things that, like, first come to mind that you think are, like, from all your experience, like, what are like some key components if you're kind of building youth ministry or trying to kind of deepen it?
So for me, it's kind of the way my mind works is, like, I think you need to build a foundation, but you need to build a foundation of what do you want to accomplish. Like, when I talk to a youth minister, especially a new youth minister, so if they go, and I'll speak for high school, but you could make the same case for middle school. If a kid goes through your high school youth ministry program for 4 years, what do you want them to look like? Like, what are you looking for at the end of that? Because that'll help you determine, okay, what do we need to include in what we're doing?
Right.
And some of those things are leadership. Like, are we developing leaders in our churches, in our parishes, so that they can help build up the youth ministry program in their parish, that they can help build up youth ministry in their community? Are they evangelizing and things like that? And one of the things that I'd started when I was in DC is working with from a book called Living as Missionary Disciples. And it's like, are we developing missionary disciples in what we're doing in our youth ministry programs?
Who writes that book?
Thank you would ask me.
Okay. I don't know if it was.
It comes from USCCB. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Living as Missionary Disciple.
Yeah. And
so
that
people want to check it out.
Oh yeah. And so that's something that I felt like was very important. If they come out like, missionary disciples, they're gonna, when they go to school, they're gonna be evangelizing. If they go to anywhere in their community, they're gonna be. And so, like, to me, that's what we should be developing.
So by the time they graduate, there's a vision for, okay, you're being inculcated in the faith. You're given all these, like, religious experiences for service, but there's a vision of at a certain point you're being invited into leadership positions, whether it's back into the youth ministry, into the wider community, but that's like a necessary thing. You're trying to have like everyone before they graduate have chances to like put their faith into action, not just sit there and kind of receive.
And be able to share their faith. They put
Right.
it into action, but also be able to speak about their faith.
Right.
And like, this is why it's important to me.
Right. So being a missionary disciple, for them to be able to talk to their peers or talk to
Yes.
people they meet, people who aren't Catholic, to be able to express to them like, here's why I love being Catholic. Here's why I'd love to invite you to come to Mass with me, tell their testimony, yada, yada, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and because I think especially like whether they're talking to somebody who's Catholic, because people need people to share their faith about being Catholic to Catholics. Sometimes that's important too. But even non-Catholics, it's like I think sometimes we get caught up in like these discussions about which faith is right and all that kind of. To me, I will say this: I would say the best way I've ever evangelized young people or people in my life, friends, is just sharing about why my faith is important to me. Because that, if I can't do that, then it's like, why is it important? Like if my faith is important to me, if I can't articulate that to somebody, then what's the point? And I say this, one of the things you were talking about youth ministry, one of the things I think is important, and it may be hard to gauge sometimes, but sometimes it's not, is when young people are at your Mass, like what do they look like? Like, are they kind of like, or are they joyful, or because and I'll say this too, what do the adults look like when they're at Mass? Do they look like they want to be there, or are they just going through the motions?
Right.
And so I think for a parish community, is like setting that right example to our young people that this is important to us, and we love our faith,
right.
And we want to be a part of the parish community. We want to share our faith with others, and so I think that's. And I've been to parishes. I've been to both sides of it. I've been to parishes where you go in and they're not very inviting to young people. And then I've been to parishes where it's vibrant, and the young people are just excited to be there, and they're part of what's going on. And it's just night and day sometimes.
But you're saying kind of this fundamental thing of trying to inculcate people to have like an experience with God, with Christ,
an encounter
with Christ that's personal, but to get to the point where they can be able to give witness to that, because and to be able to bear testimony to that by the fruits of their own life too, by their joy, by their hospitality, by obviously the way they live their life as well. But you see that as kind of a kind of in the forefront of youth ministry to keep in mind, like, what is our goal ultimately with these young people? Part of it is for them to encounter Christ, but then for them to become these missionary disciples that can give testimony to that and help evangelize whoever is in their midst, Catholic, non-Catholic, whoever, in a very personal way. Because once you have that personal, you have that sense of, okay, this is a real thing in your life. Then it's like, okay, well, let's break it down. Like, how does this make sense? How does it, what are all the tenets of the faith? What are all the tenets of this guy, Jesus Christ, and things that he said and things that he did? Am I
You're
reading that?
Yeah, no,
okay.
I would say, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I think sometimes people have a hard time visioning, okay, what does, engaged youth in our parish look like? And so we put like, borders around, like, we put it in a box, like it's got to be this, as opposed to thinking, okay, this is what we want to see. How do we get to this? Not just, okay, how do we maintain youth ministry every Sunday? It's like, what do we want to see out of this?
Right.
And I think long-term vision is something that people really need to think about. And, like you said 7 months, and I kind of threw in there 2 to 3 years.
Right.
However you look at it, a lot of times the youth minister is not going to be there for a long time. So I always encourage my youth ministers, but even the pastors I speak with, like, don't just think about like this 2 to 3 year period. Like,
right.
What do you want to see down the road? And,
right.
and can you vision it? But it's very hard because a lot of people haven't seen vibrant youth ministry, and so
right.
they need a model to say, that's what I want. How do I get there?
Right. Well, that's good. So you've been in the Archdiocese for a little over a year, and you're looking into the next year and everything. What are some of your kind of hopes and dreams? What is there anything that's kind of like next on the horizon? Like if you had one, maybe two hopes for the Archdiocese as the director. Is there anything kind of that's apparent to you at this point? I know there's a lot of just figuring out what's out there, trying to get to know the parishes, trying to get to know the players. But has anything kind of emerged to the forefront of the first thing or two to tackle to kind of stimulate some youth ministry? Or?
So my dream always is that every parish, whether it be, is actually a global dream, but
right.
We'll start with the Archdiocesan bill, is that every parish have some kind of foundation, and I'll say youth ministry, but just some kind of foundation for our young people to find a home in a parish that's there to support them and walk with them, and so that's always my dream. Like,
right.
So because I've always thought about this, like, okay, so depending on where you are born, like in what parish,
it's all right,
community that you end up in, might dictate whether you have strong youth ministry in your parish or something like that.
Right.
But I always want to flip that, and like, no matter what, a parish has something for young people. So that's my dream. Like,
right.
Every place has something for our young people to help them grow in their faith, and all the way up through high school. Because I think that's you have a lot of religious education, but sometimes that when you get up to high school, there may not be much youth ministry.
Right.
It's like, how do you work with that? So that'd be my dream. And then I'll say this, for my first year, our theme was one, coming together. So I think unity within our parishes, that we're all working towards the same goals to help minister to our young people. That's always something that's very important to me. Everything we do, and I'll say everything my office does should help lead towards something we're trying to accomplish. I'm not big on just doing these one-off things. It's like, okay, how does this fit into what we're trying to do to
right.
build up our young, build up the faith of our young people?
Right. Like, what's the overall vision for your parish, but for the diocese, and how does everything we do kind of developing that vision, and then kind of everyone kind of keep referring back to, it's like, how is what we're doing fit into this larger picture of developing leaders that become missionary disciples that have encounters with Christ, but can give testimony that, this conference, this retreat, this youth ministry program, like how do we all kind of keep plugging into this unified vision kind of thing?
Yes.
Cool. Or maybe one last question. What about, there's somebody out there listening and they're looking at their parish and maybe they have like a great youth ministry program, but maybe they don't really have much of anything. And, but whatever the situation, they're kind of feeling that itch listening that maybe they should get involved. Maybe they should do something. Maybe their parish, let's say the person's listening to their parish, they don't have a paid youth minister. They don't have a half-time paid youth minister. They have like a one volunteer that does things when they can, or maybe not even that, but someone's out there listening, they're feeling an itch to do something, but they're just like, I don't even know where to start. I don't know if I'm qualified. What would be your advice to like that person? Like how should they deal with like that kind of that itch that they're feeling? What would be a good first step for them?
So for me, anytime, to realize that that's what the Office of Youth Ministry, Youth and Young Adult Ministry is for, so they can always reach out to, like, where do I go from this, to talk to their pastor about, like, where the parish kind of is in that, and the whole idea of youth ministry and the youth, and that those would be the first two places. Right. I would say start. It's kind of that kind of open-ended. There's so many different variables within there, but I mean, I think talking to the pastor about, like, what can we do for our young people is a great place to start. And then and that my office is built. That's the reason I'm here, is to help work with parishes to help develop or enhance whatever is going on in the parish youth ministry, and be supportive of that. So that would be my advice.
No, it's great. It's very practical. Share with your pastor you're feeling this itch, and talk, pray together, brainstorm about what might be the first. But then know they can, give you a call and bring you in, and you can kind of help them to think through. Here's some people that might be able to help. Here's some programs you might be able to use. Here's diocesan things going on that could, help be a part of that. So it's good. That's some good info for people to have. Well, Tex, it's great to have you on. There's a lot more we could talk about, but I think this is a good introduction into kind of who you are and part of your story. And again, just thankful that the Lord brought you down to be part of our native soil. And on that note, I have to ask, did you bring some soil?
I did bring some soil.
Okay. So what soil did you pick and where did you get it from?
I got it from...
And why, I guess?
Well, it's interesting. Like, I got it from my from the right outside my office.
That's right.
And so it's Alabama soil.
Alabama soil.
Because that's where I am now, and I have a very strong connection to Alabama and where I work. And that's one thing. Work has always been important to me. I like going to the office every day and getting out to the parishes. And so but that's where it all kind of starts, where I work, most every day. So that's why I chose the soil right up from.
That's perfect. It's very meaningful. We would love to add it to our collection. You can just pour it in this mason jar. Don't worry about making a mess. Just part of it. Do you want to put a little Dr. Pepper in there?
is that legal?
Yeah, you put a DP in there. We've never done it before, but I feel like it's a pretty big part of your journey. There it is. If you want to found that Dr. Pepper in Macon, Georgia, who knows where you would be right now. But all right, so I want you to sign it, put the date on it, and then we'll close. I'd just love to say a prayer over you and your soil and all that it represents. And but yeah, anyone who's listening, our young people are such an important part of the church, and it might seem, overwhelming to think about trying to minister to young people, but I think a huge part of it is just people being willing to be present, to make a gift of their time and show them that they care and to be there consistently. And I think your story is a great one for people listening who just feel like, well, I didn't study this, or I don't know if I have what it takes. Is like, well, if the Lord's stirring your heart, there might be a lot of things in your background, in your life experience that actually will be very well suited in ways that are surprising to you. So I think you've got a lot for people to think about, and people out there who are listening who might have never thought of youth ministry. Maybe today's the day you start praying about it, because we need a lot of people to really invest in our young people.
Absolutely.
All right, you hold on to this. And I'll say a prayer over you and your soil, and then we'll close it out. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. Good to have you. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we love you and bless you, and thank you for gathering us today. Thank you for your many blessings, and thank you for Tex. Thank you for pursuing him as you have, Lord, to bring him into the body of Christ, to bring him into the Catholic Church, to bring him into youth ministry, to all these different places, and finally here in Mobile to be part of our native soil. We are grateful, Lord. And we just ask your continued blessing upon him and his ministry and all the lives that he touches. And Blessed Mother, we ask that you be his strong companion. Help plant our faith deeply in the hearts of our young people, so like you, they can be missionary disciples. They can give great witness to what Christ has done in their life and help build the faith, in the kingdom that is our archdiocese. And so we ask for your intercession in special ways, we pray. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And through a powerful intercession, may God bless you, your soil, and all those listening. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Amen. Well, God bless y'all. Look forward to seeing you back here next time on Native Soil.